Hello everyone, welcome to Salesforce Network Lightning Web Components tutorial. Topics what we are going to cover in this session, that is data binding in Lightning Web Component. In that we are going to see property binding and event binding. Then we are going to see how many types of data binding are there. So in that, one-way data binding and two-way data binding. Data binding is a core concept in Lightning Web Component that allows developers to establish a relationship between components' properties and the value displayed in the HTML template. This relationship ensures that the component's properties are always synced with the values displayed in the template, and any changes made to one will be automatically reflected in the other. So here data binding establishes a relationship between properties and template. So properties we are defining in the controller or in the JavaScript file, and in the template HTML file we are binding that property into the HTML file so that this information is getting displayed on the UI. In Lightning Web Component, there are two types of data binding, that is property binding and event binding. Property binding is used to bind a property in the component's JavaScript file to the HTML file. So we are defining the property in the JavaScript file of the component, and we are putting this property within the curly brace into the HTML template so that data is getting visible in the UI. This allows dynamic values in the JavaScript to be reflected in the HTML, creating a one-way data flow from the component logic to the user interface. So it is providing the dynamic flow of data whenever we are updating the property. By default this data is getting reflected on the UI. It uses curly braces to bind properties in the JavaScript file to HTML. Property binding is one way from JavaScript to HTML. For example, suppose there is a property called message. So this property we are going to define in the JavaScript file in the component. Then we can bind it to an HTML element, like here we are taking the p tag, means paragraph tag, and in between the paragraph tag we are writing in the curly braces message. So this message property, what is defining in the JavaScript file, it is going to bind on the HTML page, and whatever the data it is holding, that is going to display on the user interface. Whenever the message property in the component is changed, so as soon as the message property is getting updated or changed, the value displayed in the HTML template will be automatically updated to reflect the new value. So we don't have to do anything for seeing the change value in one-way data binding. Event binding. Event binding allows us to handle user interactions in the HTML template and respond to them in the JavaScript logic. So here when we are clicking on a particular button, then the logic is getting executed from the JavaScript, and again it is going to reflect on the UI. It establishes a two-way interaction where events in the user interface trigger logic in the JavaScript file. It allows components to respond to user actions like button clicks or input changes. So it is working on the concept of two-way interaction. So Lightning Web Component is not giving the by default functionality to perform two-way communication, but by creating the event handlers or events, we can perform two-way communication. Event binding allows communication from HTML to JavaScript file. So properties binding is from JavaScript to HTML, but here event binding allows communication from HTML template to JavaScript file or controller. It is used to bind HTML elements events to a method in the component. To do this, we need to use the onClick event or onChange event followed by the event name and the name of the method to be called whenever the event is triggered. For example, suppose we have a button in the component and we want to call a method called handleClick. When it is clicked, then we can bind the event like this. So here lightning button label handleClick. So we are using lightning button and label we are providing handleClick, and on click we are putting handleClick. This is the event, and again we are closing the lightning button. Whenever the button is clicked, the handleClick method in the component will be called. So from the user interface, when the button is getting clicked, it is going to call the JavaScript file or controller, and whatever the logics are written over there, that is going to reflect. Properties access control. So the private property only available within the component. So we can't call the private property outside from the component. Either no decorator or at the rate track decorator we have to use maintain internal component state. So it is maintaining the internal component state. If we are not decorating any property, then that property will be treated as private property. Public property, we have to decorate with @API, and here set is exposed equals to false on the component passed from a parent component. If we are decorating a property with @API, then it will be public property. So if any property is getting decorated by @API, so this will be treated as public property, and mainly it is going to used in parent child communication. Global property, decorate with @API, and here we have to set is exposed true on a component, can be injected from an app builder page. For primitive properties, we can directly access the private or public variables in the HTML file. We can access it by using curly braces. Types of data binding in Lightning Web Component. So these are of two types: one-way data binding and two-way data binding. Data binding is synchronization between controller or JavaScript file and the template or HTML file in Lightning Web Component. Whenever we are changing any property in the JavaScript file, it will be automatically replicate in the HTML file or template file. So as we have to define the property in JavaScript file, so as soon as this property is getting changed, so it will automatically replicate in the HTML file. Whenever we have to send data or we have to establish communication from HTML file to JavaScript file, we have to take the help of events. So in this case, when we have to communicate from HTML file or template file to the JavaScript file or controller file, so here we have to take the help of events. It refers to the mechanism of connecting the user interface elements in HTML to JavaScript data. It allows the flow of data between HTML and component logic. There are two primary types of data binding in Lightning Web Component, that is one-way data binding and two-way data binding. So let's see one-way data binding. In one-way data binding, data flows from JavaScript controller to the HTML template. This is the default behavior in Lightning Web Component. So the one-way data binding is the default behavior of Lightning Web Component, and this flows from JavaScript controller JavaScript file to HTML template file. So whenever we are creating the Lightning Web Component, then by default we are getting three files: .html file, .js file, and meta XML file. So in the HTML file we are getting template opening tag and template closing tag. In the middle here we are putting h1 tag, heading 1 tag, and in this we are putting the content hello, comma, and greeting we are putting in the curly braces. So we are using the curly brace for binding the data from JavaScript file to HTML template file, and after that we are closing the h1 tag, heading 1 tag, and this we have to put in between the template tag. So in the JavaScript file, import in the curly braces lightning element from LWC, export default class is our component name, and it is extending lightning elements. Here in the greeting we are putting in the single quotes word or anything what we are putting in this greeting in the single quotes that we are going to see in the UI page. So by binding the data here in the template file, this data we are going to see in the user interface. This will bind the greeting variable to the HTML file. So like this we are doing the one-way data binding. Two-way data binding. Two-way data binding refers to the ability to bind data so that changes in the user interface are automatically reflected in the component's JavaScript data and vice versa. However, Lightning Web Component does not provide automatic two-way data binding. We need to manually handle this using event listeners. So to perform the two-way data binding, we have to create events. So in the HTML file, uh, this here we are seeing the template opening tag and template closing tag. In between we are writing input type equals to text, and here we are providing the value greeting, and we are calling this on change event. So the event is handle input change, and this event we are declaring in the JavaScript file here. Then after we are putting hello in a paragraph tag, and we are also binding greeting. So this greeting we are binding here by using the curly braces and closing the paragraph tag. So coming into JavaScript file, so here we are extending this file from lightning element, and in greeting variable we are putting within the curly brace word, So this is like default value. Then the handle input change this event. In the bracket we have to write event, and in the curly brace we are putting this dot greeting, means we are calling this greeting equals event dot target dot value. So it is updating the greeting when the user types. So whenever the user is typing in the text, so he is saying that hello, and the greeting is hello and greeting data. So to do the practical, just open the VS Code, press the Ctrl Shift P to authorize an org, and search for SFDX. Authorize an org, press enter. Again press enter. So it is failing. SFDX authorize an org failed to run. So to solve this issue, we need to choose the task manager here. Again I am coming to details. So search for node.exe. So here it's click on end task, end process, close this. Again we have to perform the same step. Ctrl Shift P, authorize an org, enter, again enter. So it is redirecting to the URL login.salesforce.com. By providing the username and password, we have to click the login button. So authentication successful. You have successfully logged in. You can now close this browser tab or window. So again coming back to our VS Code. So here we are also seeing exit code is 0. So it is logged in successfully. So to see the one-way data binding, we are going to create a Lightning web component. So here I am going to create the Lightning web component by the name Data Binding One Way. So for this again we have to press Ctrl Shift P, and we have to go for SFDX colon create Lightning web component. Hit enter. Enter desired file name. Here I am providing data binding. Here I am providing data binding one way, the component name. So again press enter. Enter desired directory. If you have, you can provide, otherwise go with default force-app /main/default/LWC. So hit enter. So here we are seeing data binding one way. This is created, and also we are seeing the files data binding one way.html, .js and .js-meta.xml file. So just opening the data binding one way.html file. So we are seeing only template tag in HTML file. Here we are going to put in the p tag hello, and save this file. Opening the GS file. So here we are seeing import lightning element from LWC and export default class. Class name is our component name. Data binding one way, what we had taken the name of component. It is extending lightning element, and we are seeing the curly braces. Enter here. So here I am creating a variable by the name greeting, and in that I am putting the message in single quotes. So here we had put the message learning data binding within the single quotes and putting the semicolon. So this property we have to bind in our HTML file as well. So copy this property and coming to HTML file, as we have to bind this property by using the curly brace. So within the curly brace we have to put this property. Save this file. Next we are going to modify the meta XML file. So is exposed equals to true, and also we have to set the targets. So here I am putting the target lightning app page, as we had already created the lightning app page in the org. So save this file. So again coming here and clicking on data binding one way, this one, right click and deploy this source to org. So it is deploying. So deploy this source to org is successful. So again coming back to our org, provide the username and password, hit the login button to get logged in. So here I am searching for the lightning app page what we had created already in the app launcher. So click on this. So we are at lightning app page. Click on setup, edit page. So as we had created a lightning web component by the name data binding one way, so we have to look into the custom one, data binding one way. So simply we have to drag and drop here. So save this, click back. So here we are seeing the message hello learning data binding. This message we had given in the property or declared in the property in greetings, and that greetings we had bind on the template page. So like this we are binding the data, and this is called as a one-way data binding. So from the controller or from the JavaScript to HTML template. So again coming back to our VS Code. So here I am going to create one more lightning web component. So simply I am pressing the Ctrl Shift P, create lightning web component, enter desired file name. So here I am providing data binding two-way. So press enter. It is prompting us for the desired directory. I am going with default. So here we are seeing data binding two-way. So this is created like HTML file, JavaScript file, and meta XML file. So just I am opening the HTML file, this one. By default we are seeing the template tag. So here I am simply putting in the p tag hello, and for now I am saving this file. Again opening the JavaScript file. So here we are seeing the class name data binding two-way, and it is extending from lightning elements. So in this I am declaring a variable greeting, and in this I am putting a message. So I am putting a message data binding two-way within a single quotes, and at the end I am putting the semicolon. So up to now we had seen in the one-way data binding example. So what we have to do for this, again coming back to HTML, and we have to define here, or within the curly brace we have to put the greeting. So we are getting that particular message on the user interface. So here we are going to see what is two-way data binding. So here I am going to declare handle event change. So here I am creating a event handle input change, and here I am passing the event. Then we are calling this dot greeting equals event dot target dot value. So, and this is for comment only, event binding to capture input changes. So whenever input is getting changed, the greeting message is going to be displayed there. So also in the HTML file I have to define input type text, and value I am providing the greeting. On change handle input change the event. So this is like event binding, we are binding the event. Also here I am going to provide the greeting or binding the greeting. Saving this file, also saving the JavaScript file. Again opening the XML file, here I have to make it true and set the targets. So here I am setting the targets lightning app page. Save this file. Coming to data binding two-way, on this folder we need to click right click, deploy this source to org. So again coming back to our org. So at this page click on setup, then edit page. So again we have to look for our component data binding two-way. Simply we have to drag and drop anywhere on this palette. So I am putting this below the data binding 1. So here I had put click save, press the back button. So here we are seeing that this message is coming from one-way data binding, and this message is coming from two-way data binding. So in the text we had provided data binding two-way and hello data binding two-way it's coming. So if I am putting here anything like any data, session 2, and pressing the tab, we are seeing this is changed. So whenever we are changing the value of this text box, we are seeing here. Thank you.